Check, check, check. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. You good? Check. Yeah. Where's the bus? Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Welcome. Could I ask everybody to please stand up, and the Honorable John Zabrowski will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if you could remain standing for one more moment, Sienna Zarek is going to lead us in the national anthem.
No, I'm not going up on the stool. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rang there, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the lands of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you all for coming. Why can't you put me on the stool? I was trying to sing and balance.
Here we go. Thank you. That was awesome. Thanks, everybody, for coming out today. This is an amazing turnout. I've been to a lot of these, and none have been like this. Governor Christie is a good friend. I've got to know him over the last 2 years as he's been up here in New Hampshire, not only campaigning for himself, but campaigning for other candidates as well. Governor Christie is a principled guy. He says what he means what he says. He's got great ideas. He's willing to listen, stands on principle, but knows when to compromise. Great man, and I wish him well all the way through February 9th and beyond. Before we hear from Governor Christie, I would like to take an opportunity to introduce Senator Jeb Bradley, New Hampshire Senate Majority Leader. Jeb.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have to say, it's great to be back in Bedford. When I was a member of Congress, you guys were so good to me, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. But we're here for a different reason tonight. Every 4 years, New Hampshire has a chance to look at all the presidential candidates, to look them in the eye, to shake their hand, and take the measure of the person. And because of the hard work that we do on a Saturday before Christmas, when everybody is busy, wants to be with family, wants to do all the Christmas activities that everybody does, here we are, doing our live free or die job. A couple of weeks ago, I endorsed Governor Christie. And let me tell you a little bit about why. It won't be too long, I promise. I'll give you the microphone in a minute. I had the job working with one of Bedford's finest, Ken, raise your hand, Ken Hawkins. I had the job with Ken Hawkins several years ago to do what Governor Christie did in New Jersey. We had a $5 billion unfunded liability in our pension system. We had to roll up our sleeves. We had to get the job done. The first thing that I did after talking to Ken was to watch Governor Christie's YouTubes about how he talked about it, about how he did it, about how in the bluest state in America he was able to get pension reform through and put his pension system on a much more viable track. He was able to do it with hard work, and he listened. That's the thing. He's going to talk a lot tonight, but Governor Christie called me all spring, all summer, and he said, Jeb, tell me what I need to do well in New Hampshire. And then he didn't talk. He listened. That's how we got pension reform done. And I'm looking for a candidate that can do two things, more than anything else. The two biggest problems we have, an $18 trillion debt and deficit. Governor Christie was the first person in this race to put out a detailed entitlement reform plan. And I know that he has the political courage to get it done. Why do I know that? Because he solved New Jersey's pension problems. One of the toughest things to have to do, to say no to people, that things have to change, that we can't go on in the way that we're going on. And that's the kind of courage we need when tackling our entitlements and our national debt. And we also need a president who is resolute in protecting Americans. And as somebody who served in Congress, I know what that means. He's had the experience, he has the backbone, he's tested. Ask any of the people from New Jersey, and I bet there are a lot of people here. During that hurricane, who were you having as a governor and who helped bring New Jersey back? It was Governor Chris Christie. Yes, he says what he means. He means what he says. He's tested. He's resolute. And there's one more thing. We all know that this political season, there's been a lot of talk about political correctness, right? Right? Yeah, I think so too. I've heard it all the time. I have one question for you. If you were Jeb Bradley, what do you think PC means? Got it. President Chris Christie. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have New Hampshire do our job. Ask him the tough questions. He's here to tell it the way it is. Governor Chris Christie, God bless you.
Hello, my name is Paul LePage. I'm the governor of the state of Maine. Like New Jersey, the state of Maine is a blue state. In the last 50 years, there's only been 2 Republican governors in the state of Maine. And we have done exactly what you've been hearing about what's happening in New Jersey. And let me tell you, I met Chris Christie in 2010, right after the election. Our elections in 2010 as a governor-elect. And since then, we've become really, really good friends. In my re-election, Chris Christie came to Maine 5 times. He was the head of the RGA, and they invested heavily in my campaign, and we won. While everyone in America, all the pundits, all the reporters, all the polls were saying I had no path to victory. But we won, and we won with the most votes ever recorded for a governor in the state of Maine. And it's account of Chris Christie who came up those 5 times, and he was sort of become a mentor. He's got me out of my shell. He's eliminated my shyness. And we work very well together. And I came out very early in support of Christie for the presidency for a multitude of reasons, but the two most important things that I think, besides being a good friend, the two most important things that this gentleman has that he can lead our country is character and integrity. He tells it the way it is. He doesn't make it up. And ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Governor Christie, who will be our next president.
All right, all right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am really happy to be back in Bedford. Let me start off by thanking all of you for taking your time on a late Saturday afternoon and early Saturday evening to spend time with us. It's incredibly gratifying to have you here, spending your time to listen and ask us questions. So I appreciate that very much. Next, I want to thank the governor of Maine. When he says he came out early, he came out early. I announced on June 30th for President of the United States, in the first week of July, Paul LePage was having us to Maine and endorsing us for President of the United States. I am absolutely honored to have his support. And I will tell you, there's no more effective conservative governor in America than Paul LePage. Any of the real issues you want to talk about, whether it's his extraordinary effort in welfare to work, and he is changing lives in Maine with his welfare to work program, getting people back to work, giving them the sense, once again, the dignity that comes with getting up every day and going to a job where your labors are appreciated and rewarded, not just financially, but also with the sense inside that you're doing something every day that matters. He came into a situation in Maine with an awful debt in the hospital system that was getting ready to bankrupt that hospital system. He did the tough things that needed to be done to bring that into balance and make those hospitals work again for the people in Maine, had them there to care for their needs, but didn't put the taxpayers into enormous debt in order to do it. Again and again, you can read about him, and that's why I'm so proud to have him not only as an endorser, but proud to have him as a friend. And yeah, I was up there a lot in 2014 to campaign in Maine. Let me tell you something, there's nothing like campaigning with Paul LePage. He says, I brought him out of his shell. Yeah, he didn't want much of a shell there, as far as I could find it. And what he's done is, and I told people this all the time, and this is the same thing you'll get from me. Fact is that Paul LePage wins twice in a blue state like Maine as a conservative Republican because he is himself every minute. The genuine article, what you see is what you get, and is a man of his word. And it doesn't mean that everybody in Maine agrees with every word that comes out of his mouth. In fact, they don't. But what they know is that when he says he's going to do something, he does it. And so he says, I've been a mentor to him. It's been a mutual relationship. Because when you're fighting the tough fights in a blue state as conservative Republican governor, you need people. You don't need to speak with all due respect to my great friend Bill Haslam in Tennessee, that really red state. When I talk to Haslam and tell him about some of the problems I have, Haslam doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about Democratic legislatures and Democratic interest groups and awfully difficult media. LePage knows all about that. So when you pick up the phone and call him, you like to talk to somebody who can relate to what you're going through and give you the best advice you possibly can. I'm thrilled to have him on my team for president, and I am honored that he and his wife and both his children are on board with us, and we're just thrilled. So, Paul, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm going to say something quickly off the top and then get to questions, and it's different than the normal town hall meetings because we got two governors now. So you're going to hear from both of us. We'll call on people for questions. You can ask us whatever you like. Get input from Paul as well. It's real good to have him here. We had him here in New Hampshire a few months ago to do a town hall meeting, and it went really well. So we said, why not come back and do it again? Last thing I want to do, though, before I speak, is to thank my friend Sienna for the national anthem. First time I met Sienna, she sang at the first town hall meeting that Paul and I did together. And she did a great job. She has sung for me a number of times since then. You may have seen the two of us starring on the front page of the Union Leader last Sunday, doing the national anthem. I didn't have to do much except hold my hand over my heart and listen and be impressed. And this morning, yes, you sang for me this morning. She's doing a full day work today, Sienna. She sang for us this morning at Al's Automotive. And so we've had a great day together. I want to also let you know that now that we're 6 weeks away, 6 weeks from the New Hampshire primary, that I have brought reinforcements to New Hampshire. How many of my friends from New Jersey are here today? Raise them up. They came up on buses last night. They've been going door to door through your neighborhoods. Let me apologize in advance. But they are excited and enthusiastic, and I am thrilled as governor to have so many folks from my home state who want to come up here and get to know all of you and help us get the word out about voting on February 9th. I've also brought other reinforcements. I'll talk later today about my mom, but my dad is here. Now, I've told all of you about my dad over the course of this campaign, and I told you that he watches all these YouTube videos and he watches live streaming in the town halls and all the rest, and I told you that he has been threatening to come to New Hampshire. I held him off as long as I possibly could, New Hampshire, but he is here. My 82-year-old father, Bill Christie, is sitting right here in front. Dad, stand up, let everybody see you. This is my 53rd day in New Hampshire as a candidate. More days in New Hampshire than any other candidate in this race. The person in second, who has the second most days in New Hampshire, is not even a candidate. The person with the second most days in New Hampshire is the next First Lady of the United States of America, my wife, Mary Pat Christie. She's hosting Sienna right now, or else she would stand up and wave to you. But she's got Sienna on her lap. Now, we've got all the Christie children here as well. You've heard me talk about my 4 children. They have all made it up. Now, our oldest 2 are here just fresh off of their college, end of their college semester. You can only imagine how thrilled they were when they heard, what are you doing the morning after you get home from college? You're getting on a plane and coming to New Hampshire with Dad, but they are acting happy, so let's keep them happy. My oldest children, Andrew from Princeton University and Sarah from the University of Notre Dame, stand on up. Next on the hit parade is our other son. He is a freshman at the Del Barton School. He is the goalie on the JV hockey team. He's up here just for today because the JV hockey team has a game tomorrow, and you can't win the game without a goalie. And so the goalie needs to be in nets tomorrow with the glove, the blocker, the pads, and all of his wits about him, but he's spending the day with us today, my 15-year-old son, Patrick Christie. Patrick, stand on up for everybody. And last, but certainly not least, our 12-year-old daughter, the person who I've said to many folks ask me in New Hampshire, you have 4 children, are any of them going to go into politics? And I said, you know, I don't really know, obviously, but there's only one that seems to me to be the obvious choice to follow her father into her father's business. She is fearless. You will see her campaigning with me throughout New Hampshire. She does not ever get nervous. She will be the person standing in front of me, introducing herself to you before I get to introduce myself to you. She is also the shooting guard on the Villa Walsh Middle School basketball team, taking a few days off from that duty to come and help her dad in New Hampshire, our 12-year-old daughter, Bridget. So we got them all here, everybody. We're serious. We're taking this whole thing very, very seriously. We're bringing the whole family up now, and they're all working, and we're all thrilled to share our family with you because you've shared your families with us. One of the greatest things about this experience already, even with 6 weeks to go in New Hampshire, is that we really feel like you've welcomed us into your family. And it's a really wonderful thing to experience as a candidate, I have to tell you. People told me that if I spent a lot of time up here, that that's what would happen, that I would feel like I was part of the family. And it's everybody from the folks that I've met in diners and restaurants and bars to extraordinary elected officials like Jeb Bradley, who honors me with his support and endorsement and honors me with his introduction today. Jeb, thank you. Everybody in between have been so extraordinarily good to me and welcoming to me. And your appearances here tonight just further cement my feeling that New Hampshire takes their job really seriously. And you need to. Because this campaign's been really entertaining so far, hasn't it? I mean, you know, we've got a very interesting group of people. Started with 17, we're down to 14. Some senators, some governors, some former governors, some business executives, a character. We got the whole group here. It's been quite something. It's been a great learning experience for me. And I, too, as I think many of you, have been entertained by the process. There's been some really interesting things that have been said and done, and all of that has been entertaining. We had an entertaining summer and an entertaining fall. But after the attacks in Paris and the attack in San Bernardino, the time for entertainment is over, everybody. Showtime is over. It's time to pick a president of the United States. And there's nothing funny about that. We're not picking a legislator-in-chief. We're not picking an entertainer-in-chief. We're picking a commander-in-chief. We're picking the person that we believe will perform the job that is the first and most important job of the President of the United States. And that is to protect the safety and security of the American people. And so this next 6 weeks is a time for everybody, the candidates, all of you, the media, to buckle down and stop the showtime. It's now time to look into those eyes, as Jeb Bradley said in his introduction, and decide, who do you trust? Who's been tested? Who's ready to sit behind that desk in the Oval Office and to acquit the responsibility of protecting the American people? I will tell you, after my 7 years as a federal prosecutor, in the immediate aftermath of September 11th, I know how to do this. I'm the only person on that stage that has hunted out terrorists, investigated them, prosecuted them, convicted them, and sent them to jail for the rest of their lives before they could harm even one American. The only person on that stage that's used the Patriot Act, that's used all the surveillance tools that we have under the Constitution to make sure that your families were safe. On my first day in the Oval Office, no one will have to explain this to me. I won't need a book or a manual. Jim Comey, the FBI director, won't have to introduce himself to me. We know each other. He was the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan after September 11th when I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. He won't have to explain to me what actionable intelligence is, and he'll never have to wonder whether I have the backs of the men and women who work for him every day to do what they need to do to protect you and the rest of the people in this country. He won't ever have to wonder, nor will you, because I've already done it. It's not a theory. I've made decisions that were life and death decisions on how to do these investigations and how to stop these people before they acted. No one else in that stage has done that. And then 6 more years as governor, operating in very much the same way, having to make decisions every day, not debate them, not refer them back to the subcommittee, not vote for the amendment on the second reading after the First Amendment was defeated on the first reading, as your eyes glaze over, wondering what the hell they're really doing. No, when you're governor, you make decisions every day. And Paul will tell you the decisions that come to our desk are always the ugly ones. The easy ones are made by somebody else. And when they come onto our desk, it's because no one else could make them or wanted to make them. And I've had 13 years now of making those decisions. So when I get to the Oval Office, you will not have to worry about having the kind of president of the United States that we have right now, who wrings his hands, is weak, and puts America in a position where we're in harm's way because his word can't be counted on, and the American people and people around the world not only don't fear him, they don't respect him. We need to have a president, once again, who our allies respect and trust, and who our adversaries fear, because that is the only way that we will keep America safe. And so it is showtime, everybody. It is ready to go. You have the biggest decisions to make on behalf of the American people over the next 6 weeks. And I will tell you that your attendance here tonight gives me a great relief, because I know you're doing your job. You're here tonight to do a job, so we're going to let you do it. So there's only one rule, unless LePage wants to ask some more, in the Christie Town Hall meetings in New Hampshire. Now, in New Jersey, my New Jersey friends will tell you there are 4 rules, because it's New Jersey, all right? But you courteous people in New Hampshire, not nearly as unruly as the people in New Jersey, you only need one rule. Your one rule is raise your hand, and I'll call on you, and you can ask us a question. And we'll answer the question. This is not like the town halls that you might see other candidates give here in New Hampshire, where you have to write your question down when you walk in and hand the question to somebody, and then the staff person reads the questions and decides which are the easiest ones that the candidate likes to answer the most, and then they pretend that that's a New Hampshire town hall meeting. Now, I want to say it would be wrong of me to give the name of the candidate who does town halls in this way, but her initials are Hillary Rodham Clinton. So, here's what we're going to do. LePage and I are going to alternate. I'll call on someone. We'll ask. You can ask either one of us. Whoever calls in, you don't have to ask that person a question. You ask whoever you want. We'll call on you, so I don't get to pick everybody. Paul's up here. You should get to pick some folks. And just stand up. We're going to get a microphone to you, okay, so people can hear you. We got folks running around with microphones. And then we'll answer your question. So, who wants to start? Let's go to this lady right here in the red scarf.
Say you are a man of your word, because when I met you last May here in Bedford, and I charged you with when Long Branch is going to get our boardwalk, you said by the end of the summer, and we got our boardwalk, so thank you.
Excellent.
My next question is, what would you do about Gitmo? They say it's a breeding ground for more terrorist operations. Do you close it? Do you send them home? What do you do with Gitmo?
Keep it open and keep every rotten, dangerous terrorist who's there as an enemy combatant against this country there, and never let them go.
Good for you.
And I'll just say this, any commander-in-chief of this country who would for a moment consider letting any of those people out is betraying the American people. And let me tell you something else. They've now done a study by the president's own director of national intelligence. And he says that 30% of the people that the president has released from Guantanamo have gone back in the terrorism business across the country. 30% that this president has let out definitively are back in the terrorism business. Now, I got to tell you something. That can only be done by someone who has no understanding of how to protect this nation. This president and his Secretary of State, Mrs. Clinton, who says that on the issue of terrorism, they asked her about her policy towards ISIS. She said just last week, well, my policy would be just about the same as the president's. I swear I didn't hire that guy. He's doing that for free. And just the same as the president's. And that's what he's doing in Guantanamo. It's wrong. He is now like a petulant child. In the last 13 months of his term, everything that the American people and the Congress has stopped him from doing for 7 years, he now wants to do in the last 13 months just to show us he can. Well, we better raise our voices collectively as a country. He cannot close Guantanamo. It is wrong. It's in contravention of what the Congress has asked him to do and passed laws to do. And if we want to protect the American people and the safety and security of our country, we should keep Guantanamo open and keep those people there. Go get 'em.
I can't say hardly any more than that because he's absolutely correct. And I will just add this. Yesterday, I spent an hour and a half with the chief of the U.S. Border Patrol on the northern border because Canada is bringing in a whole lot of refugees. And they're concerned about, well, I should say they're concerned. I'm concerned about a repeat of what happened on 9/11. One of the terrorists that flew the plane came through Canada, through Maine, flew from Portland, Maine to Boston. That's what I fear. So we keep them, we never let them out, and I'll tell you, it's not on our property. Remember that, it's very important. Do not have them on the mainland. Very, very important. We need to keep them off the mainland. That's why our military is so important to us. So they defend our freedoms on the mainland and keep those combatants in Guantanamo Bay. If you need to, make the fence a little higher. Who's that? This lady right here.
So I have a question. Like you, I have children. I've worked hard, like many people in this room, and I'm tired of being penalized. I give to my church. I give to those that are less fortunate. I'm teaching my kids to work hard, do the best that they can. Maybe I'm the 1%, maybe I'm not, but I feel like I am constantly penalized. I want the government to understand that I give back. When you tax me to death, I can't give back. I want my kids to learn, if you work hard, no matter where you go in life, you will be successful. How do we bring that back to our children? And how do we help the people here within the United States that are struggling? Because that should be our priority.
You're right. All right, a few things. First off, listen, this will be an absolutely critical election in deciding whether the philosophy you just espoused will be what rules here in America or whether it won't. See, over the last 7 years, Barack Obama has decided that the government should pick the winners and losers. The government should decide who wins and who loses, who does well in this country and who doesn't. And I have to tell you the truth, that's not the country I was raised in. The country I was raised in, what you said was success was determined predominantly by two things: the greatness of your ideas, your ingenuity, and the depth of your work ethic. How hard were you willing to work? How great were your ideas? And that's what determined winners and losers. But now in America, We have the president who talks all the time about wanting to have a level playing field. Understand what he means by a level playing field. What he means by a level playing field is a bunch of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. get to tax you to death, use your money to decide who they want to give advantages to, whose life they think they're making easier. Well, there's two problems in my view with that. The first one is they have no right to take more from you than the government absolutely needs to take in order to provide the essentials of what government should provide, starting with safety and security. Second, the people often they think they're helping, they're debilitating. The President of the United States, you never hear this president talk about the things that I hear this guy talk about, and I'm going to ask him to talk about in response to this question at all. You never hear him talk about the intrinsic value of work. Right? Do you ever hear this president talk about how valuable it is to work hard every day? How important it is to have a job to go to get up to every day? That it makes you feel good. Forget about the money it puts in the bank, the food it puts on the table, how it makes you feel inside to know that you have a place to go every day. You got to get up in the morning, get dressed, get out, go someplace, to work hard, to give people your labor, and that it makes you feel a sense of self-worth, knowing that you're contributing to our society and at the same time supporting your family. You never hear the president talk about that, ever. He's always just talking about what the government can give to people, what the government can do for people, what the government should do for people that we're not doing now, but not what we demand from people, what we want to inspire people to do. I think the way to change this is not only through changing the tax system, which is confiscatory and is abusive, and by the way, is rigged for the rich. It is. The reason the American people think that the tax system is rigged for the rich, by the way, is because it is. Because they're the ones who can afford lobbyists and lawyers and accountants to go down to Washington and get the special loopholes that they want. And that's why I've said in my campaign, every loophole on the personal tax side is eliminated except for two: the home mortgage interest deduction and the charitable contribution deduction, because that's what real Americans use to make sure they can own a home and afford it, and what they do to reward, as you said, the giving back to those charities and those causes which you believe in your heart deserve your support and your labor. We want to encourage that. So we need to fix the tax system, but more importantly, we need to fix a system in Washington where the president doesn't talk about the intrinsic value of work. See, you're doing the best you can to inspire your children, as you said in your question, to do better, to understand that their hard work will be rewarded. You need help. You can't do that on your own, especially if you have a president who's talking about the opposite and then makes people feel like they should have their hand out, that they deserve something more than what they can get through their own hard work. Now, last part of your question is this country is the most generous, caring, loving country the world has ever seen. We have spent hundreds of billions of dollars eradicating AIDS in Africa. We have sent our men and women around the world to fight for the freedom and the liberty of others. We are always there to help those who need help. Americans need help now. The American people need help now, and they need help from a government stop dominating them and dominating their lives. And when there are the least fortunate who are down on their luck and need help, the American people have always been there through the private sector and the government to give a hand up. But that's all, a hand up. Get you back on your feet so then you can get back to work. So we need an economy that's going to create the kind of jobs that get those people back to work, give them an opportunity to do it. So help for the least fortunate is twofold. It's when they're down, to give them the hand up and help them back to their feet. The American people have always been willing to do that. But the second part is to talk about the intrinsic value of work and to make the American people from every part of this country feel once again that they have a president and a government that values work first. Work first. And if we do that, then I think it'll help you to inspire your children even more because you have a president who's saying it, who's talking about it all the time. It'll help others who don't have someone like you in their lives, who are still looking for inspiration to have that happen. And lastly, it'll give the government the time to do what we really should be doing. Because when you heard the testimony this week that there's 120,000 people in this country who have had their visas revoked, and we don't know who they are or where they are. The government needs to spend time on doing the basics. We should get back to doing the basics and doing them right. And if we do that, we're going to serve the people much, much better. I think that's the way we do it. I mentioned in the open that this guy has done more about encouraging the value of hard work than any governor in America through his Welfare to Work program. And I don't know if you want to talk about that or anything else you want to talk about.
Just 3 small points. Number one, I absolutely agree with what the governor said about our tax structure for individuals. It is rigged. It is rigged. On the other hand, it's also rigged for our corporations to the point where the rest of the world have realized that high corporate taxes affects good-paying jobs. And in Maine, we've lost a few companies that not have gone to another state, but another country, because we're a border state. It used to be that Japan and Canada had higher corporate rates than the United States. We are now #1 in the world. Not a good place to be when large corporations leave our land. And right now, there's almost $2 trillion of cash sitting in foreign countries because of our tax code. So I think on individual tax codes are going to be fairer, and I think we got to be fair to the tax structure because we are no longer one economy in the world. We're #2, and we have too much U.S. money in foreign banks. We got to bring these companies back to this country. As it relates to the government making decisions, we have a program called Welfare to Work. It's very simple. If you're going to ask the state for any benefits and you're not disabled and you're not over 65, actually it's over 50, and you ask for assistance, all we ask is that you make an attempt to find a job. You don't even have to find one. You just have to make the attempt. And the federal government came and said, you can't do that. And they said, I said, also, I want to put a picture on EBT cards. And I'll tell you why in a second. So they said you couldn't do that. So they came to Maine and they sat there. They had some people from Boston, which is the district administrators, and they said, you can't do that. I said, okay, meeting's over. Where do you want me to send all the paperwork? I'm no longer going to do food stamps, no longer going to do TANF. It's a federal program. I'm going to lay off all 500 people, and you guys do it. Where do you want me to send the paperwork? I left the room, went into my office, and they followed me right in. Governor, come on, let's talk about it. Oh, okay, you want to talk now. Okay, now you're not ordering me. We're going to discuss it. Well, when they left, they allowed me to put pictures on EBT cards, and they allowed me to tell people, you need to go look for work. We will help you. So what we have done with Welfare to Work is very simple. We built a new building in South Portland. We brought in the Department of Education, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Health and Human Services. They come in, they apply. Oh, and VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs. You apply, you come in, they take an assessment. If you need education, they send you to the education department. If you need to go look for a job, they send you to the labor department. If you need some schooling, they send you to education, and we get you a program for skill sets that you can work on. Problem solved, with the exception of the pictures on the EBT cards. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story. Maine has $330 million budget from TANF and food stamps on our credit cards, the EBT card. Without the pictures on it, every time we made a drug bust, we'd get 6 or 7 EBT cards. So I'm saying, I didn't realize these drug dealers were also selling EBT cards. Then I find out they're not. That's a preferred payment structure. So the $330 million, this is how it works. On the 9th of the month, all the EBT cards, the debit cards, are loaded by the federal government. In Maine, at midnight on the 10th, they're available. By 3 a.m., half the money is gone on the same day. Now, we're just a rural little state. We're your neighbors to the north. So we're tracking where the money goes. 5 major cities: the Bronx, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Orlando, and Las Vegas. So do we have problems with the system? Yes. So what we do now is we handhold the people in the sense that we are working with them for education, for work, if they need services. The entitlement systems in our country were designed to give a hand up, not a handout. It should not be a career path. And so that's what we're doing in Maine. In fact, this week, we're written up in the Washington Examiner saying that it's starting to catch on. And if we all get together and do this, we're answering your concern about your kids, my children, everyone's children, grandchildren, unborn great-great-grandchildren. What we're going to do is build the future, not have it going the way it's been going the last 8 years. That's very important.
The president's clean power plan is kind of rough on a lot of states' economies, especially the coal industry. It's like 40% of electricity in the United States comes from coal. What would you do about the president's clean power plan?
Well, first off, and I'm sure Paul has done this as well, we've sent our refusal to comply with the president's clean power plan from New Jersey. Again, this is a federal government that wants to be in every single part of your life. There's not a part of your life that they don't want to influence or control. So now they're going to tell everybody how each state should be generating electricity and heat for all of you. Because they're doing such a great job at everything else, why not give them a crack at this too, right? In New Jersey, we pulled out of something called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. It is a compact amongst the northeastern states, and what it is a cap and trade program. And it adds money to your utility bill in order to pay for clean energy programs, according to the theory. And we, as the northeastern states, would, solve the global warming problem that the president talks about all the time. How likely does that sound? And so we pulled out of it in New Jersey, and I said, I'm not going to comply with this. I'm not going to raise my folks' utility rates and continue to comply with this thing. What's happened since then? Well, by 2014, New Jersey has already met its clean air goals for 2020. How do we do that without a federal government or state government intervention into the utility business? We did it by allowing the private sector to work with their customers in providing electricity in a way that's both cost-effective and efficient. So in New Jersey, the most densely populated state in America. 53% of our electricity is generated by nuclear. 53% of our electricity is generated by nuclear power, and we've been operating those nuclear plants safely and effectively for over 4 decades now in New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to get over 3 Mile Island. Okay? It happened a long time ago, 36 years ago. It's time for us to get over that. Nuclear power can be safe and effective, and we need to consider it as an option. Secondly, here's one that you'll win a bet on. You ask anybody who are the top 3 solar producing states in America, they'll get the first 2, Arizona and California. Pretty easy. Number 3 is the great state of New Jersey. Yes, New Jersey, the 3rd largest solar energy producing state in the country. How did it happen? Because we worked with the private sector to make it affordable. And now, whether it's manufacturing plants or big solar arrays on the properties of office buildings or on top of parking garages or on the roofs of homes, people are choosing to use solar energy because with the private sector, they've made it cost effective for people to do so. We've also taken advantage of the natural gas boom in this country. And with the Marcellus Shale right next door to us, beginning in Pennsylvania, we have built pipelines to bring that affordable natural gas to our state. Our state's rates of electricity have gone down 9% in the last 18 months. That's incredibly important, especially to folks in our state on a fixed income who have to pay to turn on their lights and keep their houses warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And so we've done all that by now we're building 3 more new natural gas-fired electricity plants in our state. And we still will use coal as a backup for those, and we have some plants that still operate that way. It's a mix without us dictating to anybody exactly how it's supposed to be done. The fallacy the president has is he thinks unless he tells you to do something, you won't do it. It's not true. The American people want a clean environment. They want clean water. They want clean air. But they're not going to tie one hand behind their back and put their country at an economic disadvantage to the rest of the world in order to do it. And we don't have to. But if we listen to this guy, I mean, it's extraordinary. Now he sets this climate change conference and this supposed agreement. Do yourselves a favor. Don't bother reading it. I started to. All you need to know is this. Let's start with this. China doesn't have to do anything. In fact, can pollute the world more than they're doing right now, unabated, unstopped, till 2030. We have to start immediately. Let me just tell you something, and I'll end my answer with this. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, as negotiators, I wouldn't let these 2 buy me a car. Okay? Can you imagine if these 2, like, let's say tonight after we leave here, because Hillary's in town, you know, so maybe before she starts the debate over there with her tough opponents, Bernie Sanders and Marty O'Malley, before she starts, maybe, you know, she could take you over to the car dealership. Here's how they'd negotiate, Obama and Clinton, if they were buying, let's say they're coming and they're going to grab Ray here. They're going to buy Ray a car. They're going to waltz Ray into the dealership. They're going to say, hey, this is my friend Ray. Ray is going to leave here with a car tonight no matter the price. So let's start negotiating. I mean, that's the way they do it. So poor Ray, he'd leave with a car, no money in his pocket, but he'd leave with a car. This president and Mrs. Clinton don't know how to negotiate anything that's in America's interest. And this climate deal is just another example. The Iranian nuclear deal is another example. TPP is another example. It doesn't matter. Over and over and over again, they sell America out in order to get a line on their resume. It's wrong. And they're imposing regulatory restrictions on the people of this country that are beyond our imagination. 81,000 pages of new regulation from the federal government just in 2014. 81,000 new pages. Who is reading this stuff? Who is writing all of this? Who is never sleeping in this government in order to just regulate you more? So we oppose the president's Clean Power Plan. We oppose it on the merits. On the merits, it's a bad deal for the American people. It's a bad deal for the American economy. It's a bad deal for the American worker, and it's not going to do anything to make the pollution in the world any different. This president lives not in the real world, he lives in the world as he wishes it would be. 13 months to go, everybody, just 13 months. Governor?
State of Maine's got a renewable energy portfolio of 60% of all electricity. Sounds good. We're the 12th highest electricity cost in America. And we border Quebec, which has 41,000 megawatts of hydroelectricity that we could buy at half the price that we're paying today. But my legislators are Democrats. The Democrats control. And they have put a little law in place that says hydro above 100 megawatts is not renewable. Yeah, it's the only law of its kind in the United States. So what we have done, when I became governor in 2010, 82% of the homes in Maine were heated with heating oil. As we go into this winter, it's down to under 60%. And we've gone to a new technology called heat pumps. So to give you an example of what a mini split heat pump is, it uses electricity. The governor's mansion's about 17,000 square feet. Used to use 10,000 gallons of oil a year. A couple of years ago, that was 40,000 a year. With the heat pump technology, it's down to 7,000. Costs you a couple $1,000s to install in the average home. It is the technology of the future. However, EPA doesn't call it clean. So what Chris just said, Governor Christie just said, we're pushing back. You're right. I'm going to push back for 13 months. And then this gentleman's going to fix it.
Good evening. I promise this question won't be about fantasy football.
Yeah, you know my answer on that.
I saw. With our manufacturing footprint in this country shrinking for reasons like Governor Page said, because of high corporate tax rates, Obamacare and others, what are you going to do to re-energize our manufacturing base?
Sure, there's two things to do in addition to what Governor LePage said on the corporate tax side. The first thing is to understand that the main drivers of costs in manufacturing are two things: labor costs and energy costs. Those are the two main drivers in manufacturing costs. We don't want to change our labor costs. We don't want to lower our standard of living for people. But where we can compete with the rest of the world now is on energy costs. The fact is, if we were to team with Canada and Mexico and fully use the resources here in the United States, we could drive our energy prices down even lower than they are right now because of the abundance of the energy in Canada. Mexico is now privatizing. The government will no longer control the energy industry in Mexico, allowing for foreign investment, American investment, and American technology to help bring more of the oil and natural gas that exists in Mexico from underground to surface for use. And our increased technology will allow us to compete with the Chinese or anybody else on a much more level playing field if we have a national energy policy that exploits these advantages. The president instead turns down the Keystone Pipeline, insults our neighbors in Canada by doing it, on top of us losing the opportunity to have that oil come to the United States create jobs here, be refined here, and be used here. 85% of the energy that was going to come through the Keystone Pipeline was going to be used by America. Only 15% of it was going to be exported at the end of the day. That is a friendly neighbor, not a Middle Eastern country, not a country we're in conflict with, not a country that we have to compromise with. This is Canada, our friendly neighbor. And Mexico, our friendly neighbor to the south, wants to have exactly the same arrangements with us and wants to provide energy to the United States. That's the first way. We have to become a country that has a national energy policy that will drive down costs and allow us to go to manufacturers and say, listen, you're going to pay more for labor here, but you're going to pay a lot less than you're going to pay in China for energy. And your ability to be able to make up the difference in labor will be made up here, and you'll have great American workers at the same time to manufacture your goods. The second thing that's incredibly important on the manufacturing side, right now the Small Business Administration regulation is $10,000 per employee. That's the average to comply with federal regulation for a small business. How about for a manufacturer? National Association of Manufacturers say the average cost for a manufacturer to comply with federal regulation is $34,000 per employee. Now think about how non-competitive we make ourselves. The government is imposing so much regulation that it costs these folks $34,000 per employee. Well, that combined with higher energy costs and higher labor costs are going to make these manufacturing jobs leave this country and have made it leave this country. Here's what I'm going to do as president. The first executive order I will sign as President of the United States is the identical order that I signed as my first executive order as governor of New Jersey. And it was to suspend all regulation from any department or agency of the government. At the state level, I did it for 90 days. The federal government's a heck of a lot bigger. We'll do it for 180 days. No new regulation of any kind for 180 days. And in that 180 days, we send the Vice President of the United States out to hold hearings around the country with manufacturers and other small businesses to say which of the regulations that you have to comply with now are so onerous and so stupid and so expensive that we should get rid of them. I did this in New Jersey. After 90 days, my lieutenant governor came back, and we were able to get rid of, by the end of that year, with the stroke of a pen, 1/3 of all the regulation put in place by my predecessor, with the stroke of a pen. And that helped our business environment extraordinarily. Imagine if we had the same rate of success as a country. That I came to you on December 31st of 2017 and said, 1/3 of all the regulation that Barack Obama has put in place is now gone. Think about what that would do for manufacturing in this country. So I think those are the two major ways we do it, and that combined with what Paul said about the tax system on the corporate side. Stop having our corporations pay twice when everybody else is paying once. You know, if they make money outside the country in our corporate tax system, they pay taxes in the country where they make the money. Then when they want to bring, they're American companies, when they want to bring their money back to America, we tax them again. You know, the only major country that does that, beside us? North Korea. Now seriously, do we really want to be having ourselves compared economically to North Korea? It's crazy, right? So we need to end that double taxation. We need to lower the rates down to 25%, get rid of some of the loopholes that are involved in it as well, but make ourselves competitive with the rest of the world. You saw what just happened a couple weeks ago. The Irish-based pharmaceutical company, Allergan, merged with Pfizer so that Pfizer can now have an Ireland address. Pfizer is now going to be not an American company, an Irish company. And here's what Hillary Clinton says about that. You watch that debate tonight, you'll hear it. They'll say corporate inversions are wrong and the government must stop them. And when she's president of the United States, she'll stop all corporate inversions. Another stupid statement. How about instead of outlawing corporate inversions, we get rid of the reason that they want to go overseas? How about that?
I have one saying about corporations, because I come from the business world. Capital investment goes where it's welcomed and stays where it's appreciated. Our big corporations that have left this country do no longer feel appreciated. So they're investing in countries where they're appreciated. Burger King is now in Canada. So the point about the taxes, I think taxes is a big issue. Energy, certainly a big issue. Big, big issue. There's one I would add that wasn't talked about. I would convince our education system that not every child is born to go to college. I would say community college, trades are very important for the 21st century because manufacturing has become highly automated. It's highly technical. And that's why I think STEM education in America is going to be necessary, and we should be all over it. And that will make our workforce attractive when these companies come home. Right there.
Hi, Governors. Thank you for being here. To me, nothing is more important than our national security. And it seems like, just like Social Security, every election, national security is something that's talked about. It's a campaign issue, but nothing ever seems to really get done. Would a President Christie make national security a top priority and do something about illegal immigration? And if so, what would that look like?
President Christie will make it the top priority, not a top priority, the top priority. And here's why. I was named U.S. Attorney by President George W. Bush on September 10th, 2001. The job I accepted on September 10th, 2001 got significantly different the next day. A lot of other things got significantly different the next day, too. My wife, she went to work that morning like she had for 20 years before that. She got up, got out the door at 6 in the morning, drove to the train station, got on the train, took the train to Jersey City, parked, got out, got to the PATH train, took the PATH train to the World Trade Center. And at 7:30 in the morning on September 11th, she took those huge escalators from the basement of the World Trade Center up to ground level, and she walked the 2 blocks from the World Trade Center to her office. I took our kids to school that morning. The 2 that are sitting next to each other, who are now 22 and 19, were 8 and 5 on that morning. And I took them to school, and I came home and turned on the television, and the first building was on fire. And I called Mary Pat immediately. I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Oh, yeah. They said it was a commuter plane that flew into the World Trade Center. We hear the fire trucks coming. We're working. We're fine at my desk." So we just started talking. I had the TV on in the background. We just started talking about the rest of our day, how the kids had done in the morning, all the normal things that a husband and wife will talk about. And then the second plane hit the second building. And she told me that they were telling her that they had to evacuate her to her basement of her building, and she would get back in touch with me as soon as she could. 5.5 hours passed when I couldn't find her. And I have to tell you that in those 5.5 hours, I thought about 3 things. The first thing was, what was I going to do without my best friend? The second thing was, what was I going to tell the kids? Now, at that time, we had 3. Andrew was 8, Sarah was 5, Patrick was a year old. And the school called me to say that since so many of the kids in their school had parents who worked in Lower Manhattan, that they had told them about the attack. And so we needed to be prepared to answer their questions when they got home. So the second thing I was thinking about was, what am I going to tell the kids? If I don't hear from her, when I go to pick them up, what am I going to tell them when they say, how's mom? And the third thing I was thinking about was, what kind of single parent would I be? Am I up to this, to raise these 3 children on my own? 10 minutes before I left to pick them up for school, the phone rang and I got the greatest phone call in my life. Mary Pat had left with a group of her colleagues after both buildings had collapsed, after all the mayhem. They had found t-shirts that they wet and they put around their faces because you couldn't breathe in Lower Manhattan. And they made their way uptown. They held hands and made their way through the smoke and the grime and the grit and all of it uptown until she finally found a working payphone. And she called me to tell me she was okay. And we had to figure out how to get her home. There was a boat on the east side of Manhattan that goes to the Jersey Shore every day, the Atlantic Highlands. And so I told her, I went on the internet and it said that there was no line there for the boat, although there was a line on the west side for dozens and dozens of blocks, because all the tunnels were closed, all the bridges were closed. So she got on that boat, she went down to the Atlantic Highlands, and I'd gone down there before, and they usually let you pull up right to the dock, and the boats come in, and you pick up your husband or wife or loved one. They kept us like 3 blocks away this day. And so I stood on the street waiting for her to come, and I saw her, what I thought was her, walking down the street, but she had a blanket wrapped around her. And so when she finally got to me, I looked at her, and she was soaking wet from head to toe. When you got off the boat from Lower Manhattan, the fire company was there, and they hosed you down with a fire hose from head to toe so you wouldn't bring the contaminants into the state. And a really nice local department store was there to give blankets to the people who were being hosed down. We got home that night, and we got a call from a friend in our parish. Mary Pat had helped her husband get a job. He had lost his job, and we knew him from church, and he said, they were in the same business, said, you know, can you help Frank get a job? So she passed some resumes around, and eventually he got a job at a place called Eurobrokers, which was on the 44th floor of World Trade Center Tower 2. And she asked Mary Pat, did you see Frank? Did you see him at all on the way into work? Did you see him leaving? And Mary Pat said she hadn't seen Frank that day. And she said, well, I'm sure Frank's okay. I'm sure he's in a hospital somewhere, and he just hasn't been able to call me yet. Frank didn't come home. He died in the World Trade Center that day. And we went to that funeral, and the gym in our parish is now named after Frank. Our oldest son's best friend, he lost his dad. Lost his dad on September 11th. He worked at Cantor Fitzgerald. Nobody came out of that place alive. And every year, on his dad's birthday, he puts his father's picture on his Facebook page. Just says one thing: Dad will never forget you. Here's what I fear. We've forgotten Frank. We've forgotten this young man's father. We've become complacent as a country because we've gone all these years up until San Bernardino without another attack. But somehow we thought they had forgotten about us. I'll never forget, because this isn't theoretical to me. My wife was there. We lost friends. We've watched young men and women grow up for the last 14 years without a mother or a father. And once you've had that experience and then had been given the responsibility by the President of the United States to protect a state that lost more people than any state in America other than the state of New York, it's not a theory. Mary Pat and I can't go anywhere in New Jersey without meeting someone who lost someone on September 11th. So when you ask me if national security will be a priority, National security will be the priority because the President of the United States has no more important job than that. And the fact is that I think you want somebody behind that desk who not only knows how to protect you, but knows how it feels when we don't. Because I know the loss and the pain, and I know the fear of loss, even though I was lucky not to have that loss. And once you know those things, it never leaves your mind. If you lived in our state, you would see people every day who would tell you it never has left their mind for 14 years because we live with it every day. We need a president who no longer treats us as some theoretical challenge. We need a president who knows how to do this and who will have the American people and their safety not only in his mind and in his fist, but in his heart. And that's the kind of president that I will be because that's the kind of life I've led. I didn't ask for it. I wouldn't have never asked for it. But that's the life I've had. That's the experience I've had. And there's nothing more important. And that's why when they made our intelligence community weaker this past summer, Senator Paul, Senator Cruz, and the President of the United States, I raised my voice in objection. And you'll remember that first debate when I was arguing with Senator Paul, and he said I was overreacting. I want him to ask the families in San Bernardino if I overreacted. I want him to ask the families in Paris if I overreacted. The fact is, we need to do everything we need to do to protect this country and to keep its people safe. And there is no one on that stage who has the experience that I have in this, both professionally and personally. And there is no one on that stage who will protect America more effectively and more viciously than I will protect the American people. So it's the first priority.
In order to have security in our country, we have to have a strong military. And in the last 8 years, it's been hurt significantly. The infrastructure is being hurt. Our training, our National Guard, everything has been shrunk. And I will say this, my wife's cause as the First Lady is working with military families. And what we see, we ask our young men and women to go to a foreign land to keep us protected and safe here in America. And then when they come home, many are kicked to the curb. We have homeless veterans. We have veterans that have no jobs. We have veterans that have military insurance, health insurance, but the federal government's not paying their bills. We have bills in Maine dating back to 2011, 2012. And these people's credit is being ruined by the federal government. It is really sad that we live in a nation where we will go to a land where we fought to protect our safety at home. And we have a man in Washington who's more interested in bringing those people to America as refugees while we let our military veterans suffer.
All right. This young lady right here.
Thank you. Governor Christie, I just wanted to ask you what you would do as president to protect the rights of the unborn, the disabled, and the elderly.
pro-life, and so I believe that that unborn child is a life that deserves protection. And so I would do all that I could to make sure that every life in this country is protected, as I said, in response to her question. The disabled has been a particular cause of mine and Mary Pat's during my time as governor. We have the highest level of autism of any state in America, and it has had enormous effect on families in our state. And we have done all that we can to try to make sure that more funding, more treatment, more schooling is available, and more counseling for those families to make sure that they can deal with the real challenges that come along with being anywhere on the autism spectrum. And as far as the elderly are concerned, it's not only about making sure that they can afford to live the life in retirement that they've earned, but it's also about making sure that only God takes life. And we have a move in our state, as there are in some other states, towards assisted suicide. I have to tell you, I won't do it because I really believe that those decisions are decisions that shouldn't be made by us. And these are tough issues. All the issues you talked about are tough issues. And the fact is that if I'm running for President of the United States, you have the right to know where I stand on these issues. You have the right to know what's in my heart. It doesn't mean that for people who disagree with me that I think they're bad people. They're not. They disagree with me on difficult moral issues. We need to respect each other in this country in that regard. We need to respect each other's points of view. My point of view is heartfelt, and I'll fight for my point of view. But we can fight for our points of view on these really difficult moral issues without impugning the morality of those who disagree with us. And so as a country, let's make sure we have civilized conversations about this, and never to resort to violence. There never should be an excuse to resort to violence on these issues. And we don't want that kind of country, and we should not elect leaders who incite people to those type of acts, because that's just unnecessary, and it's against who we are as Americans. So that's where I stand on those issues. You have the right to know it if you're considering voting for me. And the fact is that I have no hesitation in saying it out loud because it's what I believe in my heart. So we'll just continue to work together on those things. I don't know if you want to add anything, Paul, or not.
I'm married 31 years, and my wife tells me that since she's known me, I fight for the underdog. So a baby in a womb's the underdog. End of story. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Governors. Question for both of you. It has to do with the Supreme Court, an institution I have lost some confidence in. The next president is highly likely to have to appoint more than one new member to the Supreme Court. Could you please share with us the criteria, what you would be looking for in a prospective Supreme Court justice?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Listen, instead of going through a whole list of criteria for you, I'll just tell you the type of person that I would look for and appoint. If you want to know what kind of folks I want to appoint and would appoint to the United States Supreme Court, you look at Justice Sam Alito. Justice Alito had the job I had. He was U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. And then he became a Third Circuit Court of Appeals judge, and President Bush made the very wise choice of putting him on the U.S. Supreme Court. He is strong, he's smart, he is reliably conservative, he is understated, but he is absolutely firm in his conviction that the role of a judge is to interpret the law, not to make it. And if you go and read any of Justice Alito's opinions since he's been on the Supreme Court, I defy you to find one that's inconsistent with that notion. And that is the single most important notion, I think, in picking a Supreme Court justice, is does he or she understand the appropriate role of the court under our Constitution, which is to interpret the laws, not to make the laws. And it's a very important reason why the founders did it the way they did it. They said these guys and women should interpret the law, not make it, because the folks who make the law should be subject to our vote. They should be subject to our recall. They should be subject to our will. When we give a U.S. Supreme Court justice a lifetime tenure, they are no longer subject to the will or the voice of the people. I'm okay with that as long as they're going to do their job the way it was meant to be done, which was to interpret the laws that are passed by the people's representatives and signed by their president. If they're going to start making laws, then they're going to start being elected and being subject to all of the same things that we're subject to in terms of our interaction with all of you. I don't want that kind of system, so it's incumbent upon me to pick people who understand that. Sam Alito is a guy who, without variation, has done that in a way that is smart and conservative and consistent and quiet. He's not looking to make himself a star. What he's looking to do is to do his job as a United States Supreme Court Justice. So if I became president and an opening came up on the Supreme Court, first thing I would do is call my old friend Sam Alito and ask him to come down to the White House for a cup of coffee and say to him, Sam, who are the best conservative, reliable judges in America who I could sit and talk with, that you trust, that you have confidence in, that would do the job like you do it? We'd start with those, and we'd work our way from there. That's the way I would do it. Thank you. One caveat, unless LePage wanted the job, and then we'd give it immediately to LePage.
Yeah, in the state of Maine, you don't have to be an attorney to be a judge. All you need to be is learned of the law.
He's pitching for the job, everybody.
You got it? I'm pitching.
You're watching him. He's pitching right in front of you. It's
No.
shameless. It's completely shameless.
No, you can't add anything to the fact of having a Supreme Court judge, which is a lifetime appointment, has to be interpreting the law as it was designed. And when you editorialize the law, you weaken our country.
We'll go all the way up on top. Yes, sir. Yep, you got it. Getting you a microphone so everybody can hear you.
Governor Christie, a few moments ago, you talked about national security as it related to more or less within our borders and inside. It's a nice segue towards this question, which is, I'd like to hear your thoughts on managing radical Islamic terrorism as it relates to the dangers coming from the Middle East. And some of this is going to involve, I guess, managing the nation's relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Sure. First off, I don't think you can manage radical Islamic terrorism. You have to defeat it. So that's the first thing. Because, listen, understand who these people are, right? They're folks who are committing their lives to the murder of anyone who disagrees with their religious philosophy in order to scare the rest of us into conforming to their religious philosophy. That's what it is. If you want to summarize it absolutely concisely, that's what it is. They will murder people who disagree with them in order to scare the rest of us into conforming with them. I think religion plays a large part in our society and should. And I believe everyone in this room should be able to practice whatever religion they choose to practice that they feel in their heart, freely and openly and vigorously, as long as you don't try to impose your religion on the person next to you, and you don't use violent acts in support of your religious belief. I don't want a country where we have a religion. I want a country where we have many religions. A country where if you are a peace-loving Catholic or Protestant, Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu or if you're an atheist. You get to practice what you want to practice or not practice anything at all without interference from the government and without interference to anyone else. Radical Islamic jihadism is the exact opposite of that. So we can't manage it. So what do we need to do? A few things. First off, radical Islamic jihadism is just as bad for peace-loving Muslims as it is for peace-loving Christians or Jews or Hindus or Buddhists. Because if you're not willing to comport to what they want as a Muslim, they'll kill you too. And they're killing Muslims across the Middle East as well who don't comport. The Jordanian pilot who was burned alive in a cage by ISIS was a Muslim. Now, the only way to deal with people like that is to have force meet force. We cannot sit back and hope they'll change. They're not going to. But we cannot do it by ourselves. America should not be asked to do this by ourselves because it's not just a threat to America. The French understand that full well now. We need to get our NATO allies and our allies in the Middle East to work with us on these issues. Now, you raised a specific instance of Saudi Arabia, who undoubtedly has a mixed record in this regard. They understand that ISIS is ready to come for them too. ISIS is ready to come for the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the same way they're ready to come for the kingdom of Jordan, the same way they're aiming for the military government in Egypt, the same way they're aiming for the royal family in the United Arab Emirates. Because in their view, those governments do not have the same goal that they do. Our problem right now is that we have a government in Washington, D.C., and a strategy devised by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton that says this: we're not going to be loyal to our allies. We're going to make deals with Iran. We're going to make deals with the mortal enemies of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Jordan. We're going to make deals. We're going to play footsie with the Shia. We're going to let them team up with Russia in Syria to prop up Assad. And we're going to pretend that somehow they're our allies in the war against ISIS. They are not. They could care less about that. What they're there to do is to spread their empire, a Shia Muslim empire across the Middle East. So first is, we got to start picking sides. We cannot play footsie with a regime in Iran that chants death to America for the last 36 years, that does things like stone women in the street and hang homosexuals from cranes in the center of Tehran because of their sexual orientation. That is not a civilized regime that deserves, forget our support. It doesn't deserve our recognition or a conversation with us. So as president, one of the first things I would do to show the seriousness of our purpose to our other Arab friends and potential friends is I would say three things about Iran. First, you will never get a nuclear weapon under any circumstances, and if I need to use military force to prevent it, I will. Second, you will not have a conversation, let alone an agreement, with the United States of America unless and until you recognize the right of Israel to exist. And third, that the United States government's official position is that we support regime change in Iran. Doesn't mean I'm sending soldiers there to kick the government out. It means that I want the rest of the world to know that I believe, and the American people believe, that a regime like the one I just spoke about, that says death to America, that supports Hamas and Hezbollah, that is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, that stones its own women and refuses to educate them, and that hangs homosexuals from cranes in the town square, is not a legitimate government. And we will not recognize it or support it, and we're in fact encouraging the people of Iran to change their fate by changing their government. That would send a very strong message to the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Emiratis, the Egyptians, that we have picked sides and that we are going to fight with them to be able to eradicate ISIS and the other radical Islamic jihadist movements that exist in the Middle East and in other parts of the world. But before you talk about, everybody gets hung up on boots on the ground and how many boots on the ground, man, we better start setting some principles first. Why are we doing it? What do we stand for? And what are we looking to achieve and accomplish? Until someone can answer those three questions, you have no right to ask an American soldier to put their life on the line until they know what is the mission, how do I accomplish it, and what support will I get from the American people to accomplish it. So that's what we need to do. That's not managing radical Islamic jihadism. That is the path to destroying radical Islamic jihadism, and there is no other answer for a peace-loving country and a freedom-loving country like the United States but to do exactly that. And if you elect me President of the United States, that is the path I'll put us on.
Islam is a religion, jihadists are criminals. I absolutely agree with everything Governor Christie just said. You can't manage. You can't have a deal with Iran and give them money and think that you're going to get a good deal. My feeling is exactly the same. We have to get the rest of the world to understand that we're with them. We're unified as a globe to go after the jihadists because they will kill anyone. It's that simple.
All right. Now, my staff is signaling me that I'm supposed to take one more question, but I'm going to take two. And here's why. Because I want them to remember who the boss is. You all laugh, okay? But here's the thing. Has anybody in this room, raise your hand, has anybody in this room run for President of the United States? Okay, no, so I can tell you what it's like to run for President of the United States. You think it's glamorous, right? Here's what it is to run for President of the United States. Every day, I am surrounded by people younger than me that tell me where to go and what to do every minute of my day. The only time that they cannot complete, Paul saw this today. Governor, stay here now. Don't go here. No, wait, sit here. Nope, now you need to go there. Now it's like, 30 degrees out and the wind's blowing 15 miles an hour. We want you to do an outdoor interview so they can take a picture of the bus. And there I stand in this jacket, freezing, teeth chattering, trying to appear presidential. Why would I do that? Why would I ever do that? Because the young person with me told me that's what I had to do. The only place where I am safe from this tyranny of the young is right here in this circle. They say one more question. I say, to hell with you. I'm taking two. It is my individual declaration of independence as a presidential candidate. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pick one. Then LePage is going to pick one, because then later if they yell at me, I say, I didn't do it. LePage picked another one. I know. He's going back to Maine. What's the problem? I'll pick one. LePage will pick one, and then we'll close up. So let me go to this lady right up here, and they're going to bring you a microphone so they can hear you. And Paul's scouring the audience for his next questioner.
Hi, thank you for coming. My question is, what will you do as president to protect the rights of Christians against the liberal left?
It is a very good question. And I will not only protect the rights of Christians, I'll protect the rights of Jews and Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus against anyone in the government or outside the government who wants to vilify your right to freely, openly practice your religion. We had this big issue in West Virginia, right, earlier this year on same-sex marriage, when the woman who was the elected county clerk in West Virginia said that it violated her sense of her moral beliefs to issue a marriage license to a same-sex couple, even though the law in West Virginia and in the country requires it to do so. People ask me, what do I think should be done? Now, you had a couple different sides of this, right? You had folks who said, absolutely under no circumstances should it happen. You had folks on the other side saying, absolutely under no circumstances should it be prevented from happening, and she should go to jail if she's unwilling to do it. Both answers are wrong and impractical. The fact is, her moral beliefs need to be respected. They need to be respected. On the other side, the government has a job to do, right? The law says that these marriage licenses need to be issued. And we are a country of laws, not a country of men and women. So this is where it's good to have a governor and not some like member of the legislature running the country. Because the governor, you see, the member of the legislature would say, let's send this back to the subcommittee for examination. Come on in. Let's send it back to the subcommittee. Let's get another bill. Let's consider this. Let's have 8 hours of debate. When you're a governor, man, you've got to fix it. You have to make it work. So I said right from the beginning, there's got to be somebody else in that office who's willing to sign the certificate. So go down the line in rank order and go to each person and say, does it violate your moral beliefs to issue this license? There's no reason to send that woman to jail for exercising her beliefs. But there's no reason to prevent that couple, even though I oppose same-sex marriage. I opposed it in New Jersey. I believe marriage is between one man and one woman, but the United States Supreme Court has now settled that issue. The fact is that go to a person down the line and say, does it violate your moral views? If it does not, have them issue the license and have them sign it. Let me tell you, the couple doesn't care whose signature is on it. As long as it's a valid license, they could care less, whether it's her signature or somebody else's. This is the way you have to practically solve these problems in our country. You can't be making everything my way or the highway. And we see that in Washington, D.C. now all the time, right? We see in Washington, D.C. that these folks can't get along with each other, let alone anybody else. They don't talk to each other anymore. I mean, literally, they set up these press conferences on either side of the Capitol. I tell you, one of the places, if I were like dictator for a day, that I would ban is that bank of microphones in Capitol Hill where all the politicians go to say awful things about the other side. We would ban that for a day or two, right? Here's what I want you to do instead. They can say whatever they want. Say it to the face of the person that you're talking about. Right, how about that for a change? How about we do it Jersey style, right, Jersey people? Right? We, in New Jersey, we take it as a sign of weakness if you talk bad behind someone's back. In New Jersey, if you want to say something bad about somebody, you look them right in the eye and you say it right to them. And then we see what happens, all right? We better start be doing that in politics again, because you know what that's going to cause? It's going to cause them to stop the silliness, to stop the name calling, to stop the garbage, and to start getting the job done for the people who are paying their salaries. I watched what they did with this budget that they just passed, $1.15 trillion that they just passed yesterday. And, you know, Washington is a strange place, man. It is a strange place. You had Senator Rubio, who said he was vehemently opposed to this budget. It was an awful budget. He was horribly opposed. So I couldn't wait to turn on my TV yesterday, get C-SPAN 2 on, because Marco's a good speaker, right? He's charming, he's got a great smile, he knows how to talk, and I'm like, this is going to be a stirring speech on the floor of the United States Senate against this kind of profligate spending, supporting these ridiculous programs that the president wants. Unfortunately, he didn't show up. He didn't show up. He didn't go to work. Now listen, I don't mind him missing some time because he's running for president, But on the day we're voting on the $1.15 trillion budget that he says he's adamantly opposed to, could he at least just show up then and go and speak and vote? And then you got my buddy Ted Cruz. We've been next to each other a couple debates. We started to develop a nice relationship. Ted says that he wants to carpet bomb ISIS so much that he can test the theory of whether sand could glow. Now, let me tell you something. As a guy from New Jersey, I want to certify that as real tough talk. That's tough. Man, making sand glow. I don't even know if that's possible. But I can tell you this much, it sounds tough. It's really tough stuff. That's a lot of bombs, I suspect, to make sand glow. Okay. But this summer, when he had the chance to give our intelligence community all the tools they need to protect us, to connect the dots, to do all that we need to do to protect the homeland, he voted no. He voted to take away tools from our intelligence community, to make our country weaker and more vulnerable. See, here's the way I'd like people judged. Not by what they say, but by what they do. Except that only happens to governors like me and LePage. Everything that we get judged by is what we do or don't do as governor. In Washington, it's the exact opposite. You say things that are tough, and then you do things that are the opposite. And you insist to people that that means you're tough. Are we wondering why it's so screwed up down there? So let's make a deal, okay? Let's have them do nothing else for the next 13 months. Let's just give them the next 13 months off. Let's just say, go home, deal with your constituents, stay. Let's have them the next 13 back in the White House, okay?
Recent question was very simply this. We are a country of laws. We are a country that has the freedom of religion. And we need to follow our laws and allow people of any faith to practice any religion they choose, as long as they don't hurt other people or antagonize other people. It's that simple. Last question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Governors, both for coming. Appreciate it. I just wanted to ask the question. Either one of you can answer. I am concerned about a bank bailout again. Are either of you willing to make sure that the large banks are broken apart so that we don't have to deal with a taxpayer-funded bailout?
We should not deal. Hey. Did I pay the bill? Okay, good. We should not deal anymore with a bank bailout. And here's why. They have fair warning now. Okay? Even if you wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt last time, no, I wouldn't have, but even if you wanted to, they now know. Did not appreciate having to pay for their. On now. And this is typical of the government in Washington. When trying to fix the bigger problem you're talking about, they once again reached too far and hurt a bunch of people who had nothing to do with the fact that the banks failed and that our economy melted down. They weren't involved in any big way in bundling those mortgages and following the directives of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, by the way, to give mortgages to people who had no business getting mortgages. These small banks had nothing to do with that. They were just trying to do their jobs and do it well. And so I want to do both. I want to prevent another bank bailout, but I also, in the process, want to change Dodd-Frank so that we know that those small community banks can survive and thrive. Because if they do, they're going to help to build businesses and create jobs in this country. And for a small business, having the availability of a credit line or a small business loan is like the difference between life and death. It's a difference between growing your business and closing it. And we got to remember that our economy is built not by just the big corporations that Paul and I talked about before, but also by all the small companies, mom and pop businesses that create jobs and opportunity in this country. And we got to also remember that a lot of the biggest companies in the world started as a mom and pop operation. You know, I saw the news a week or two ago that my friend Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla had their first child. And you may have read that they wrote a letter to her saying to her that to try to make the world a better place, they were going to give away to charity 99% of all their money. Now, that's not bad, because Mark Zuckerberg started in his dorm room at Harvard, not too far from here, with an idea. And even as short as 8 years ago, I saw an interview recently replayed on CNBC of Mark Zuckerberg 8 years ago. He was 23. And they asked him about Facebook. And he said, well, you know, we've got 500,000 members now. And they said, well, what are your plans for the future? And he goes, well, we just want to keep thinking and working hard so we can make something cool. How'd he do? 1.6 billion members now around the world. And his own personal net worth from the dorm room in Harvard, where I'm sure his parents were horrified that he dropped out to go pursue this business dream of his. His own personal net worth, of which he's giving 99% of it away, is currently $45 billion. Our country is still the most amazing place the world has ever seen. That's just one example of hundreds and hundreds we could give each other if we sat around and talked about it long enough. We have to stop preventing that from happening in America. We have to start encouraging it, and letting these small banks grow and keeping the large banks under control is one of the ways that we can do it. It's a really important issue, and it's one that we never want to deal with again, because it was a scary, scary time, not only for this country, but for the entire world economy. So that's the way I would deal with it.
I absolutely agree that the bailouts, you know, too big to fail, was a big failure. I also believe that the federal government is too big to work properly. And the founders of this country wanted us to have a central government, but the strength be in its states. And I honestly believe that what Chris just said is so true. We have become a centralized society, and we need to go back to a decentralized society, because we as governors know our states, know our business, know our banking system. In Maine, we don't have any of the big banks, but we're still paying the debt. We have community banks, which the federal government is putting out of business. So we started out as laboratories, 50 laboratories. I think there's a lot to be said about going back to it and giving the states a lot more authority and power over their own lives.
All right. So, I want to do two things before we go. First, I want to say thank you again. The fact that all of you showed up tonight and showed up in such great numbers and had such really good questions really, once again, invigorates my belief in our democracy. We have these people from New Jersey with us. We have the press that comes from New Jersey to come and follow me around up here. They report back home what I'm doing up here. So when I come home, people ask me all the time, so what's it like to campaign for president in New Hampshire? And I say to folks all the time, if you have gotten cynical about politics, if you don't believe that democracy can really work anymore, come to New Hampshire. Because whether it was a Friday night in July or whether it's a Saturday night in December, I've had hundreds and hundreds of New Hampshire residents who have given up their time when they could be doing something else to come and sit and listen to me and ask me questions and look me in the eye and try to decide who they want to support for the next president of the United States. That just tells you that our democracy really can work and is working. And you provide great inspiration for that, not only for people around the country, but you provide great inspiration to me as a candidate to keep going. Because you make me believe that by coming here and doing this, that I can in fact make a difference. Make a difference to all of you and make a difference to your families and make a difference to our country. So I want to thank you not only for showing up, but for showing up all the time and showing up to all the different town hall meetings that you show up for all the different candidates. Now, on that subject, I want you to stop doing that now, okay? I would really appreciate it if you would just stop showing up at the other guy's stuff. Now, I know you all get the manual here in New Hampshire, the voting manual. You get it like right before your 18th birthday. And it says in there, you have to say a few things to candidates. First, you must say, welcome to New Hampshire. You all say it. Whenever you say, welcome to New Hampshire. Thank you very much. It's good to be back. The second thing is after a town hall meeting, so many of you come up to the candidate and say, that was very interesting. Thank you, Governor. That was very interesting. If you're in an optimistic mood, you go, all right, they found me interesting. Excellent. If you're in a bad mood, you go like, interesting? That's it? That's all I'm getting is interesting? But it's all right. And the third thing you all say is you come up to the candidate and you say, you're in my top 3. You know you do. You're in my top 3. Now, some of you tell me who the other 2 are. Some of you demur and say, no, I'd rather not say, but you're in the top 3. And in July and August and September, this is good stuff. There were 17 people. Election day is far away. I'm in the top 3. I'm in the game. I'm feeling good. Here's the thing. There's 6 weeks to go, okay? I'm tired of being in your top 3. I no longer want to be in your top 3. I want to be your top 1. This is time to decide. I want to be your top 1. And you all also taught me that lesson, because I did a town hall meeting back in the summer, and a guy came up to me and he broke almost all the New Hampshire rules that I just laid out. He came up to me and said, Governor, I love this town hall. I agree with everything you said. I think you were great. And I said, thank you. And he goes, and I'm not voting for you. I said, you're not voting for me? What do you mean you're not voting for me? And he said, I'm not voting for you. You forgot to do something. And he said, so as a result, I can't vote for you, but I wish you the best of luck. And this is an older guy, looked like he was in his early 80s, and he starts walking away. I said, wait a second. You got to tell me what I forgot to do. What did I forget to do? He came back around and he said to me, you never asked for my vote. You never asked. He said, I was listening the whole time. I loved you. I thought you were doing great. And I was thinking, he's going to ask, he's going to ask. And then you ended the thing and you never asked. He said, so, since you didn't ask, you're not getting my vote. And I said, oh, all right, I'm sorry. Can I have your vote? He goes, too late. I said, too late? Come on, that's not fair. It's only the summer. There's a long time to go. And he said, all right, I'll come back in the future to another one of your town hall meetings. You probably won't remember me, and I'm not going to tell you I'm there. But I'm going to be there to see if you actually remember what I told you. And if you do, and you ask for the vote, then I'll give you another chance. And I said, thank you, sir, I appreciate that. He turned around and walked away, and he got about 5 steps away from me. And he turned back around and he said, and by the way, son, that's how we do it in New Hampshire. So, I do not want to leave you with a scintilla of doubt. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for it tonight. I'm looking as many of you in the eye as I possibly can. And by the way, it's great not to be able to look to every one of you in the eye, because that means we got lots of people here, right? I'm looking every one of you in the eye, and I'm asking you for your vote. It's 6 weeks to go. Like I said in the beginning, it's game time. Showtime is over. It's game time. And I need your vote, and I need your support to help to change this country, because we are in desperate straits. We've had 7 awful years under a weakling in the Oval Office who is afraid to make decisions, and the ones he makes are self-interested and bad and have sent our country on a bad course. So I need your help. You all can do it. I'll tell you this, if I win the New Hampshire primary, I am going to be the next president of the United States of America. Thank you all for having me tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you to Governor LePage.
I'll wait.
Consider water bottles.
Wow, I'm surprised no one's like.
He's a politician, not a cool